Hey everyone, Bobby here, test editor at Bicycling, and this is the Canyon Air-Road CFR Di2. The Air-Road is Canyon's dedicated aero road bike, and unlike Specialized, which recently merged its climbing and its aero road bike with the most recent Tarmac, Canyon is doubling down on the aero road bike concept with this bike. Besides the general shape of the frame, there are very few similarities between the old Air-Road and the new Air-Road. For starters, we have deeper tube shapes straight across the board. According to Canyon's modeling, these large tube sections are very aerodynamic at extreme yaw angles, basically riding in a crosswind. Canyon claims that the frame and wheels reduce drag by catching the wind and generating lift, similar to an airplane wing. Canyon also wanted to make the new Air-Road lighter than the previous version. They are still working with the UCI limit of 6.8 kilos, but their claim is they did shave about 170 grams off of the frame set. Most of that weight savings comes from the cockpit and the seat post, but there is actually some weight trimmed from the frame as well. Integration is a key part of all these new road bikes that are coming out today, and Canyon has done some really cool stuff with the cockpit. Of course, we have an integrated handlebar stem combo, but one of the neatest things that they've done here is actually given us an adjustable width handlebar. There's two bolts that give you 20 millimeters of adjustment on either side. Another really cool thing that Canyon did with this cockpit is they redesigned the stem so that you don't need to cut a steer tube in order to make height adjustments. To raise and lower the stem, all you have to do is loosen this bolt right here and then either pull the stem up and add spacers or take the spacers away and push it down. In terms of fit, the previous Air-Road was one of the more aggressive race bikes around. The new Air-Road is a little bit shorter and a little bit taller, and the fit is more in line with their lightweight climbing bike, the Ultimate. The previous Air-Road is one of the most comfortable road bikes I've ever ridden, aero or climbing alike, and Canyon wanted to retain that level of comfort, expecting riders to be spending long hours in the saddle. However, comfort and stiffness don't always come hand in hand, so I'm really curious to see how those two mesh together once we get out on the road. The rest of the build is rounded out with a Shimano Dura-Ace Di2 group set with a dual-sided power meter and DT Swiss ARC 1100 wheels. It all sounds cool, but it only matters if it works out in the real world. So let's get on the road and see what happens. The first thing I notice when I get on the Air-Road is that it is really stinking fast. Before you light me up in the comments and tell me that an inanimate object is not inherently fast, yes, you're correct. The rider actually has to make this thing go fast. But in this case, we're talking about the wind resistance, the drag the bike generates. So yes, this bike is fast. And you feel it because you get on the bike and your normal cruising speed, you'll notice, is just a little bit faster. It's a little bit easier to get up to speed. It's a little bit easier to maintain speed. While we're talking about the aerodynamics of the Air-Road, the one thing we'd really need to talk about is what they're calling their sailing effect. It may work in the wind tunnel, it may work in CFD, that when you hit crosswinds, drag is reduced. But the reality is, when you're out on the road, when you hit a crosswind, this bike does catch the wind. I'm 6'2" and 180 pounds, and if it's blowing me around on a crosswind, it makes a lot of sense to have a set of low profile wheels because you're not gonna want to take this bike out in a really windy day. Canyon was very clear that they wanted to make the bike stiff. They wanted this thing really stinking strong. It's made for their World Tour riders, and they nailed that. The bike is rock freaking solid. It feels like it's lost some of the snappiness from the old Air-Road, but when you stand up on the pedals, you don't feel any movement coming out of that frame. Also, while we're talking about how stiff the frame is, we've got to talk about the handlebar. It's amazing what Canyon did with the adjustable width handlebar. Nobody else is doing that right now. But while it's very comfortable riding into drops, and Canyon talked about that, they deliberately made this cockpit not quite as stiff. The one disappointment that I had is that when you're in the drops, when you're really giving it some stick out of the saddle, the bar is pretty stinking flexy. Despite the fact that the Air-Road is a purpose-built aero bike, it stacks up really well as an all-around road racing bike. Unless you're really going into the high mountains, looking at mountaintop finishes and really trying to nickel and dime for every single gram, the Air-Road's going to be a great racing bike for most types of races that you're bound to come across, whether it's American criteriums, whether it's stage races, punchy road races, even slightly hilly ones. You can trim it pretty stinking close to the UCI weight limit, and if you really wanted to, you can get below it with some lighter wheels. And of course, just because the Air-Road was designed to be winning World Tour races doesn't mean that it's also not an amazing machine for fondos. So If you've got a Fondo in your future and you're looking to shave a few seconds off your time, the Air-Road will make an excellent option. That's the Canyon Air-Road CFR, a bike that doubles down on aero is everything. Did they take it too far? Not far enough? What do you think? Tell us in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to Bicycling for more videos.